And hello, welcome back, Dr. Kurt Jefferson. Thanks for getting curious with me. Today, we're going to get curious about AI, higher ed, and the future of human creativity, I do believe. So I'm really curious to hear some of your thoughts. I've got a what if question. I'm gonna choose a what if question at random to kind of see what you think about it. But before I do that, I'm kind of just curious in your position. Tell everybody what your position is and just your kind of overview of AI and its impact on higher ed. What are we, November 10th, 2023?
Yeah, Matt, as always, it's a delight and an honor to be back with you on your program and talking about AI and higher ed. And of course, the subtext is always curiosity with Matt Murray. And I appreciate that so very much from a intellectual but an academic perspective. As somebody who has been in higher ed, teaching, administration, leadership, just all around academic context my whole career. When I think of AI, first of all, I'm a liberal arts guy. So, I think my natural propensity is toward, being a Luddite in some ways. But, it's kind of funny. I think some of us older Luddites, and I'm talking about myself, not you.
I would be in that category as well. So.
Are really not Luddites. I mean, I have watched myself adapt to, post typewriter going back, many, many years. We went into the internet. I was actually I was in undergrad. We went typewriter to PC. Yeah. We went, into the internet. It was, kind of an intranet when I was in graduate school, then moved full internet, probably when you were in college and I was.
Yep. I remember the day.
Older, but yeah, exactly. And but I do think going to AI, it is mind-boggling. I think even for those of us who are trying to keep up with technology, and I think immediately our minds jump to, probably my favorite superhero. Iron Man and Robert Downey Jr. and comic book stuff. And it goes, that's the positive to Dr. Frankenstein, Back to the Future, 30, whatever, and beyond or before. But, when I start to think about AI, I've even watched here on our campus at Spalding University in Louisville, Kentucky, I've watched the mindset of faculty change even in the last 9 months. As they've read more, as we've discussed more. The initial thought, as you well know, I think in just about every sector is, with the exception, I think, of people who actually are creating AI and doing chat GPT. And I know you're doing some of it, but the ones who are actually doing the coding and putting it together and building it, I think they're the ones that see the glass half full. I think many of us saw the glass half empty. But now seeing the glass half full, and I think your point about creativity is key, because it's not a creativity that's born out of only how do we think differently, how do we know what we don't know, how do we know what we know that then translates into further knowledge to get into what if, but also how do we creatively think to operationalize it. So that's kind of my entree here with you today is that even though I don't fully conceptualize AI, I remember back when we were trying to learn how to use the internet, and that included that I remember going home saying, okay, what is this connected? What is an internet connected to? What is out there in the ether that is sending messages, and I can get on and order a soccer ball, and I don't really know what's happening. Because as a kid, my dad would take me to a physical JCPenney, and we'd pull out a physical catalog and look through it, and I'd say, I want that toy or that. And then going through the internet thing was very similar to this moment, and that was in the mid-90s. So,
or not to mention like how we can just used to sit around and watch TV at designated times during the day, and now you and I are broadcasting live from our homes and our offices, right? it is interesting the way these changes have come about, and I love that you, in bringing up your favorite movie and superhero, you accidentally, I guess, just brought up, or serendipitously brought up my favorite novel is Frankenstein.
Oh,
So it is, yeah, yeah. As an old English professor, and it is fascinating because I had thought of this before, and I honestly I don't know where I stand on it, but having brought up Frankenstein, and it makes me think about. I never thought of Iron Man and Frankenstein being in the same universe, or really kind of being two sides of the same coin. That Frankenstein's that kind of cautionary tale of mixing man and science together, humans and science together, whereas Iron Man might be the more optimistic vision or version of that, right? And it made me think. Well, that's something I'll think about. I'll continue thinking about, I suppose, but it also made me contemplate on the opening of actually not just the opening, the full name or title of Frankenstein is it's about being Prometheus, right? The human Prometheus,
yeah.
uh, or a modern Prometheus, I believe is the actual. It says Frankenstein modern Prometheus, right? And it's this idea. Of course, you know this story well, and I never thought of this until you were saying that. But is AI like our modern Prometheus, or is it something different? Um,
Yeah,
what are
I
your
think,
thoughts? And I really don't know. I'm speaking up from a point of ignorance. It just popped in my head listening to you, but I'm kind of
yeah,
curious what your thoughts on
that,
that is. It?
it's a great, I think it's a great point, Matt. I mean, I think, when I think of my example there of Iron Man, it's very similar, I think, to the Frankenstein, concept or even metaphor. And for me, thinking about AI, there's a lot of glitz, there's a lot of glamour when you think of Iron Man and Tony Stark and building the industry. But then you also start to see the like any organization, institution, you're going to see some of the seamy underside of
Yeah.
kind of the military industrial complex issues that come out in that movie, which I appreciate as a political scientist. I taught about these
Sure.
things, American foreign policy, for 25 years. I mean, I fully understand that with AI is going to come a potential for a lot of positive, and yet, I mean, to the Promethean comment, I mean, you also can flip that around and
Mhm.
start to see the negatives that could evolve. I think the other thing, there's another part of this
Mhm.
that is this, to use another analogy from ancient Greek mythology, the Sisyphean pushing the rock up the hill back down on us.
Yeah.
Uh, the Sisyphus problem of, with technology, are we creating more work for ourselves that then we have to do more to keep up? And it's funny, I was bantering with faculty today in a meeting, and I said, look, the whole point that higher ed has gotten into now is trying to figure out efficiencies. It's
Yeah.
not just financial efficiencies, but it's also work-based efficiencies. So comment on that for a minute. But what I'm saying is
Yeah.
that 30 years ago, when you were a student, or less than 30 years ago, when you were a student, I don't want to make you older than you are, but when I was starting in business beyond 30 years ago, I used to have time to sit down with my colleagues every
Yeah.
day for an hour, drink coffee, and I could
Yeah.
spend lots of time with students waxing philosophic about the myth of Sisyphus or
Yeah.
whatever. And
Yeah.
now today, I think all of us have, we have ended up, you know, uh, compacting
Yeah.
3 weeks worth of work into a week,
Yeah.
and even though these things are supposed to help us, so I'm not trying to be negative about AI. I
Yeah.
think AI can help us, but we do have to watch out that we don't want it to become just another thing that
Yeah.
makes our life harder, more work, less meaningful, etc. Please
Well, no,
comment.
just like in good writing, you want white spaces on the pages because it gives the reader time to digest and kind of everything else. With the professor, you need kind of blank spaces in the day to stretch your brain, to connect with students, colleagues, to make you more effective in the classroom, right? No, and that should be the goal. for AI. But like you mentioned before, AI can be directed in any place we want to direct it, good, bad, or other. And it made me kind of go back to again, you again. It made me think, well, this might just be another importance or example of the importance of an education, or even more specifically of a liberal arts education, where, that we need that kind of balance between art and science in order, I think there's an old cliche or something about like the scientist teaches how to, like, destroy the world or make it powerful, and the arts teaches why it's not a why it's a bad idea, right? There needs to be some kind of co-learning, some transdisciplinary learning between the arts and the sciences. And maybe, you also mentioned that's the construction of Frankenstein, or the coders who made, chat GPT and these AI, which is all hard science, and that's true. But what if, now that it's constructed, we have a greater need for a balance of liberal arts and hard sciences to maybe not build it, but to guide it, and
Yeah,
that might be even more important than ever nowadays, right?
I think those are excellent points that you've just made, and I'm thinking about Lord Snow, C.P. Snow's, Two Cultures. I think it was about science versus the arts, and
Yeah.
might be wrong on that, but I know he spoke at Westminster College in about 1965 on a green lecture, which brought Churchill there, our
Mhm.
former employer and your alma mater. I think, there is an important dichotomy between the sciences and the arts, or the letters,
Yeah.
and what I wanted to shift slightly to your point
Yeah.
is, I was thinking to just a minute ago as we were talking about the importance of AI and the shift to embracing it in education, but also I think in other areas.
Yeah.
In a meeting today talking about recruitment with a colleague.
Okay.
In this day and age, getting out in front of students and talking with students and prospective students, recruitment is big. And we were talking about different ways in our processes of recruitment that we can talk with students and message students, and talked with lots of people. And this is part of my job. Every week
Yeah.
we're talking about how do we fine tune our messages and all this. And AI can help us with that. It can help get things off our plate. To my point, on an area that I like to talk a lot about, delegation, which people look at and think that, oh, that's the dean being lazy. It's really not. It's a dean prioritizing.
Yeah.
AI, to your point about its positive aspects, if we use it for communications, we use
Mhm.
it for routinized types of things, it can really be helpful. And I think that's a basic example being used in organizational life, especially in a university. But
Mhm.
that's business and
Well,
profits too.
yeah, but back to one of our first conversations about AI and in higher ed. I remember speaking again as a former English professor about how, in terms of prioritizing and making things more efficient, how excited I would be for stuff like Chat GPT in the classroom, because it could help students create a perfect summary, or near perfect, I should say. I want them to be using it to do their writing, because if all of my classroom knows how to write a summary, well, then we can get on how to write a synthesis or a research paper or different types of writing, right? And it isn't to replace the skills that we need to learn. It's just a way to accelerate them. So from a kind of procedural or organizational, executive, administrative, view of higher ed down to the classroom, I think the potential to streamline the entire learning environment is substantial.
Yeah, I love that, and it brings organization, it
Yeah.
brings order, helps order people's ideas and
Yeah.
thoughts. You do that as well as
Well,
anybody I've known in terms of the what if process. I mean, to me, when you organize in that way, and it's a cognition
mhm.
that you explicitly scientifically bring out in the what if process that helps us understand how to do that, and actually AI will make that, I think, reinforce that is what I'm trying to say.
Well, thanks. And we're working actually right now, ways to work with AI to streamline this process and share the curiosity-based thinking more effectively, with more people. So I'm really excited about it as well. And speaking of what if, before we wrap up here, I want to leave I did have a what if question prepared before this talk, and it's amazing that the kind of the directions this talk took, especially with stories and Frankenstein and everything and Iron Man, because there's a question I have, a what if question about AI on human creativity that I'm using for a group. I wanted to see how it may apply to the effect of AI in higher ed. So I'll read you the original question, and then I'm going to modify it slightly to get your insight on what this potential future of higher ed may look like, and as it may pertain or address all the different goals and challenges and optimism that you just spoke about. So the question is what if AI could craft personalized adventure stories for readers where the hero's journey mirrors their own life challenges and triumphs? So whether you're reading a novel or a book or watching a movie, you're the hero in it. And not only, and it basically fictionalizes, or like, was it historical fiction, right? Or it does it to your liking and everything else, but the challenges that the heroes overcoming and going through and everything are a reflection of your own. So you can see how this is a quick leap over into higher ed, because these aren't just what ifs, these are just when will they be kind of scenarios, right? So what if AI could personalize learning to the point that not just the degree they were chasing, or the subjects they took, but the actual lessons the lectures they heard, what they read, and the activities they did in class and for homework were actually based not just on science, but biology, geography, English, literature, whatever, but they were based on those core subjects that they were studying, but they were directly connected to what they were facing as an individual in life, or their thoughts and emotions and everything else, to truly personalize the learning and make it, not just a little relevant, but 100% relevant to their experiences.
Yeah, the depth and the thoughtfulness of that question is amazing, Matt. And I say that on a few different levels. First of all, let me just say my initial response was, this is why I've sat in the movie theater watching Indiana Jones or
Yeah.
Jefferson.
Yeah, I thought it was all right. So we had the same thought there. I was like, I thought that existed with Raiders of the Lost Ark since I was 5 years ago.
Bring back ancient treasure, go out and take on the Nazis, and also come back and win the girl at the end, kind of thing.
Well, and then teach class as a professor in a university, right?
Exactly. Unfortunately, a boring political scientist doesn't quite fit that framework. And as I used to say when I started teaching years ago, your Mecca is not the jungles of Colombia or Venezuela. Your Mecca is a library in the middle of campus. That's where you're going to spend most of your time, in probably what some think is the most boring place on the earth, but it's actually the most interesting, important place on the earth. Yeah. In all seriousness, though, Matt, what I like about what you're saying is all education is becoming more streamlined and tailored to the individual. And I think, unfortunately, a lot of educators don't realize that. We went through this mass conveyor belt educational process. You take 40 courses, you take a specific gen ed cafeteria model, and you come out and say, I'm educated. That we found that is not necessarily a good model, and it doesn't work with individual learning styles and students with learning frankly, students with learning differences. That's not going to work for them. And we now see, I think, even at the graduate level, if we're not thinking the way you're describing, you're probably 10 to 15 years ahead of where we are. But that's what AI will help us understand, because I think of even some of the health professions, if you want to be a neurosurgeon or a neuroforensic psychologist or something, you're going to have to be able to understand your preferences and other things, and how that helps tailor your own education. I think what you're saying is coming. I think it's brilliant, and it really and I'm covering it very superficially, but this is a very deep conversation that needs to be even more analytical precision and in a what if process. So great concept, and thanks for let me try to answer a little bit of it.
Oh, thanks. Well, let's keep doing it. So this is we'll wrap up here for today, but we'll continue this. And I've got I've got sheets and sheets and sheets of these what if questions to bounce off. And I love your insights and your perspective, and just kind of your enthusiasm, engagement for not just talking about this, but your position of leadership, that you're actually someone who can actually do this. So it's great getting curious with you, and let's do it again next week.
Thank you, Matt. Always great to be with you.
All right, have a good one.
Bye-bye.